I just wanted to congratulate both groups that met in Town of the Rot and the Pride people. I mean, everybody was got along really well, and we had no problems downtown that I'm aware of at all. And I think Paul indicated that there was no police call-outs or anything like that. So just, good job on both events, and glad to see stuff like that going on.
Excellent. Thank you, Councilmember Plunkett. Mayor Pro Tem Rogers.
Well, after Lee's, I don't have much to do. I have a Historical Landmark Commission meeting tomorrow. And on the theater group that came to town, those were the most amazing kids. They were everywhere. I mean, I think actually listening to Susan Smith, it was like 700 people that came to town with that group. So I'm real excited for the Opera House because they put that together. So good job for them. And that's it.
All right. Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Councilmember Crouch.
I wanted to thank you for verifying my car accident story. That was awesome. And I was there for the first day. I left early for the second day. And I think I'm going to ride my bike in the parade this weekend for the rec center, or with the rec center. So hopefully we can see everybody out there. And that's it.
All right, great. Thank you, Councilmember Crouch. Councilmember Kirkland.
So when they said that City Council was 2 evenings per month, they were lying. So I've been to 12 different things that I'm not going to read to you since the last meeting, and I'm actually endeavoring to go to every single board or commission meeting just so I can meet the people, learn about the business of the city, and thank those servants for everything that they do. On Saturday, I am going to have my classic car in the car show while I'm in the parade, so I'm even double booked for those events, so I'm looking forward to that. And that's all.
Welcome to council.
Yes, ma'am.
It's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun. And this is the reminder that I think that your council members more than earned their $75 a month of taxpayer dollars. So truly appreciate your dedication to the community. That brings us to item 7C. Mr. Hoffman.
Thank you, Mayor, for mentioning the burn ban and the recent fires. And Council, I'd like to give you a quick update on that situation. On Monday, I'll let you know of a fairly significant fire that was taking place about 10 miles east of here on Gaudier Trace Road. And in my last update, I mentioned that fire had reached a size of 50 acres. That fire did ultimately reach a size of 100 acres, and in the reporting period, it's not so much that the fire grew that much, but we mapped it and got a better estimate of its size. It is now 90% contained, and the city's involvement at this point is pretty limited, but we did have a pretty significant presence out there on Monday, as well as several other fire agencies, and notably the Texas Forest Service with their dozer and helicopter equipment, which was the difference maker in containing that fire. And then today we got notice of yet another fire in that same area. This fire is now 80% contained and significantly smaller, only 2 acres, and we may still have a presence out there from City of Bastrop now. I'm not aware. But during both of these fire events, we had adequate coverage with fire personnel here protecting the city. Thank you, Mayor, for mentioning the TCMA conference. Thank you also for your terrific welcome comments that you provided on Friday morning. And thank you, Council, for allowing your city manager and assistant city managers to be at that conference. It was a lot of fun to be the host city. That doesn't always happen, and I really enjoyed showing the place off. And as the mayor indicated, just so many compliments from city managers and assistant city managers across the state about Bastrop downtown, and many of them took the time to visit and all came back with glowing remarks. So yay, downtown Bastrop. Colin? I also wanted to acknowledge the the Bastrop County Leadership Program, the BEST, the Bastrop, Elgin, Smithville, Texas Leadership Development Program. That's a coordinated effort from the 3 chambers of commerce in the county. The city of Bastrop had a good presence of city employees in this most recent class that graduated. I'm not sure just how many photographs we have. We had several city employees. Candace Butts, our community impact manager. We had Andreas Rosales, our fire chief, and James Wilson, our water and wastewater superintendent. 3 terrific city employees, already leaders, and hope to have them be leaders here in Bastrop and Bastrop County for a long time to come. Thank you, Colin. The mayor adequately covered the summer reading update, but here's just a few more statistics. We have over 600 people signed up. We have had 1,000 people participate in 31 programs so far. This week, our friend Story Time will feature Recreation Manager Terry Moore, and we've had several city employees participate in that City Friend Story Time. And they enjoy doing that very much. And here is actually a picture of Mr. Munoz, the magician. That's part of the summer reading program that will be at the convention center this Thursday at 2 o'clock. Council, we will have another meeting in 2 weeks, and one item we're certain will be on that agenda is the public hearing and action, should you decide to take it, to establish the service plan and assessments for the Hunters Crossing PID, the Public Improvement District. And as mentioned earlier, we are likely to have an item on the June 28th agenda for you to consider amendments to the Colorado Bend Development Agreement. And then on July the 12th, one item that's established for that agenda, and that agenda may certainly grow, this is when we'll hear the annual presentations from those nonprofits in town that enjoy community support funding from the city of Bastrop. And then after that is the July 26th meeting, where you will receive the annual budget submittal from the city manager. And as I've mentioned before, we're working through a contract extension with our current solid waste provider. We will present that to you, and we will present council's options for moving forward. That includes, you can either agree to a contract with our current provider, or you can ask us to go through a competitive process and solicit proposals from other providers. Our existing agreement lasts for a bit over a year. It expires in August of 23. And I believe that's the last slide. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. City Manager. Council, do you have any questions for the city manager? No questions? I meant to say something, I'm going to clarify it now. Not only is Ms. Moore the reader at the library tomorrow, but she is also one of the performers at Farm Street Opry in July. So if you haven't had an opportunity to hear her sing, you'll want to join us at the Farm Street Opry in July, and so you can hear Terry sing. All right, Council, if there's no questions for the city manager, we are on the bottom of page 2 on item 8A, receive presentation on updated City of Bastrop Council focus areas as discussed at the May 12, 2022 pre-budget planning session, and provide direction as necessary. Ms. Gleason. We're being handed something for item 12D and item 12E, and so she's just trying to make sure everybody's got everything. Thank you, Madam Secretary. All right, Ms. Gleason.
Madam Mayor, City Council, City Manager, I'm here this evening to bring back to you your 9 focus areas. As you remember, per our May 12, 2022 pre-budget planning session, we had a discussion concerning Council's 9 focus areas that were built after the adoption of the comprehensive plan in 2016. We like to review them every year to make sure that we are still on track for promoting and working on projects towards those priorities. So we wanted to bring back the outcomes for vote on those focus areas. We had several focus areas we made no changes to, but we'll go ahead and run through them very quickly so that way our audience can see them. The first focus area is communication. Support and enhance open two-way communication between the city and its residents and businesses. Community safety, keep citizens, businesses, and visitors safe. Again, no change. Economic vitality, create sustainability by leveraging tourism, infrastructure renewal and investment, enhancing public-private partnerships, efficient planning and development processes, and fostering an inclusive and diverse environment that encourages entrepreneurial ventures. No change. Fiscal responsibility, prepare and manage budget, fiduciary responsibility. No change. Here's our first change. Manage growth. The proposed change reads as, maintain Bastrop's unique feel and character while meeting the needs of the population through facilitation of responsible development and redevelopment. Multimodal mobility, improved mobility for all modes of transportation, manage traffic congestion. This is the one that we wanted to have a bit of discussion on. We talked a lot on May 12th about organizational excellence. You'll see the top was the original text of the definition for organizational excellence. We, since that meeting, had Councilmember Lee email in a suggestion, so we have placed that up there. And then we also had our city attorney go ahead and email in a suggestion as well. So Councilmember Lee's suggestion, increase operational efficiency through organized governance, continuous training, employee performance measurements, employee recognition, and acknowledgement of citizen volunteers. That really just kind of puts more detail in the above definition, where the city attorney kind of went the other way and made it simpler. He said continually improve operations to achieve greater efficiencies and effectiveness. And so his thinking behind that he wrote in the email was that that allows us to change what that looks like as council's idea changes, what that means to them. So if anyone has any feedback or if there's one they prefer over the other.
Well, of course I prefer mine. But if I may, no, I actually like the simplified version of my long-winded statement, other than I feel like it kind of dead ends at the last efficiencies and effectiveness. It kind of stops there, and I'm like, okay, and what? If I'm reading that from the community perspective, I'd be like, efficiencies and effectiveness and what? So I want to suggest adding in providing service and delivery to the community to kind of round that sentence out so that people reading it will know what we're trying to achieve greater efficiencies and effectiveness in.
Councilmember Kirkland?
Yes, Cheryl and Kevin, would you consider something along the lines of efficiencies and effectiveness and improve customer service for residents and businesses?
Councilmember
Yeah, I do
Plunkett?
like the customer service thing. Yeah, that's a good thing.
Could you repeat that, Councilmember Kirkland?
Right, so the attorney's suggestion and then add the words and improve customer service for residents and businesses.
Would that be after Councilmember Lee's suggestion of adding in providing services?
Well, I was
I think it was
proposing
in lieu of.
In lieu of, right, because she
Okay.
was suggesting we put something else there, and I thought this something else fit into something that Kevin cared about a lot, so.
Excellent.
So let's make sure that that makes sense.
Yeah, Councilmember Kirkland, why don't you read it from the top?
Right.
So everybody's real clear.
Right, so continually improve operations to achieve greater efficiencies and effectiveness and improve customer service for residents and businesses.
Is there too many ands?
Maybe. That's what I was thinking as I was, yeah.
If we could change that second and to a through, And so it would be greater efficiencies and effectiveness through
Improved customer service? Through, and then improved, a D at the end of improved, yeah. Through improved customer service for residents and businesses.
Mayor Pro Tem Rogers?
I was just going to ask Rebecca to read out now that she's got it all.
Sure. Continually improve operations to achieve greater efficiencies and effectiveness through improved customer service for residents and businesses.
Any changes? All right, why don't you read 8 and 9, and then we'll kind of step back for all of them. Let's think about 7 for a minute, and we'll come back.
Uniquely Bastrop had no change, maintain and enhance our historic community feel by leveraging the unique combination of community, parks, cultural, and recreational assets that make Bastrop a special place to live and work. Unique environment, no change, continue beautification and natural areas, green spaces, and the river.
All right, council, so it looks like we have minor changes to number 7 from what we did on May 12th. Is everybody clear about how the document stands before you now? Councilmember Lee may have one more suggestion. Councilmember Kirkland, are you guys wordsmithing down there, or are you okay?
I just thought maybe adding the word in operations, because again, I'm like, what a greater efficiencies and effectiveness and what? In operations through improved customer service for residents and businesses.
I think the operations part's at the beginning of the sentence.
Okay. Continually improve operation. Okay. Got it. Sounds good then. I'm good.
Okay, council, do you want Assistant City Manager Gleason to read number 7 just one more time, or are you clear on what's before you? What's your pleasure?
Mayor, I'm clear. Do you have an opinion on that one, the wording of it, the English usage, anything like that?
All right, y'all are good.
Okay.
Okay, so I'm happy to entertain a motion, should anyone want one.
I move to approve with the new writing like Assistant City Manager Rebecca read out. I'm good with that.
I have a motion from Mayor Pro Tem Rogers and a second from Councilmember Crouch that the focus areas be amended by the how they were read out for number 7, and the others would match what's in the packet. Any further discussion or questions? Councilmember Kirkland, do you have? Okay. Madam Secretary, if you'll call the roll.
Mayor Pro Tem Rogers.
Yes.
Councilmember Crouch.
Yes.
Councilmember Lee.
Yes.
Councilmember Plunkett.
Yes.
Councilmember Kirkland.
Yes.
Thank you, council. The motion passes unanimously. We are on the top of page 3 on item 8B, receive presentation on the current status of Convention Center Hotel development. Ms. Gleason.
Yes. As you may remember, during our quarterly report, we discussed one of our management projects, which was the Convention Center Hotel. So I just wanted to bring everyone a brief update to quickly run through what we discussed last time so everyone is on the same page. We, in 2015, did a convention center study that came back and spoke to the need for a hotel attached to the convention center. In 2018, we had a hotel feasibility study done, and that also came back and said that that space could support a hotel with 120 rooms. So this council decided that this fiscal year we would move forward with attempting to build a hotel on the land where the farmers market is. I did want everyone to know that we've been communicating with the farmers market. I sit on the board of the farmers market, so we've been letting them know what's coming. We've been discussing with them, coming up with a short-term plan for where they would go if this ever happened, and then eventually a long-term plan. We have spoken about wanting to talk about the long-term plan as part of the downtown master plan that we are hoping to get funded for next year. The first thing we did was we wrote guiding principles to ensure that any proposal we brought to council was in fact positive for our community. The goal of the project is to leverage the current public investment in the convention center and increase economic vitality of the Chestnut downtown corridor. The project would include at least 120 keys or hotel rooms, commercial kitchen facilities. We are looking for a large flag brand. The operations, maintenance, and upkeep of the hotel would be taken care of by the potential partner. We are looking for a partner with a demonstrated record of success and the financial capacity. They would also manage, maintain, and repair the convention center. And the city is looking to retain an agreed number of uses per year to ensure our community is adequately served. This hits our focus areas of being fiscally responsible because we are looking to minimize the amount of public financial participation. Multimodal mobility, we are looking for this project to connect to the public realm, uniquely Bastrop. We are looking for a design concept that is consistent with the characteristics of our downtown and this rich history of the area. And managing growth, which talks about determining where placement on the site occurs, ensuring drainage needs are met, and planning for increased traffic flow. So we currently are having discussions with 2 potential partners, and both partners are prepared to meet our guiding principles for this project. We are preparing to bring a recommendation to council for a partner. From that recommendation, we would ask to begin formal negotiations to hopefully bring a public-private partnership back to council. I will note that both partners have discussed the need for a quiet zone. So I know council is having other discussions, so it's something to keep in mind. But we are hoping to be back in the next few weeks with a recommendation for a partner to negotiate formally.
Assistant City Manager Gleason, you should also speak to the existing farmers market and the plan for that.
So we've been having discussions with the farmers market. We've been keeping them in the loop as to what may be coming. So we spoke to the need for a short-term plan on where they would go. It's important to them to stay in the downtown. And then we spoke to the need for a long-term plan. And we hope to fulfill that through the placing it in the downtown master plan.
Excellent. And this is the first time that I've heard that the request for the quiet zones, is that a would like to have nice, or is that a deal killer if it doesn't happen?
So at this point, they have said that it's very important. We haven't pushed to see if it's a deal killer, but they did say it's important to the project. We at TCMA had great conversations with the city of Bryan. They have a historic hotel in their downtown. They have been working on a quiet zone for their downtown for the past 5 years and are still pretty far from the finish line. But one of the things that majorly impacts that hotel in their downtown is the lack of quiet zone. So,
Well, Council, I think that we should press to find out if that's a deal killer, because we shouldn't be spending time and money and effort on it if that we maybe need to shift to the quiet zone. But it seems like that's a really important question to know the answer to. Maybe if they want to know we're working on it, or it has to be done within a certain amount of time, but that seems like a really important detail to me. Councilmember Crouch.
Yep, that or plan B would be to get the quiet zone so that it could continue. I don't know what the time frame is for that. Maybe Councilmember Kirkland would know that.
I think that's, Councilmember Crouch, that's my point, is we need to find out, because we need to do it, but
Yeah.
we need to know if we need to delay the hotel project until after that's acquired. It was just a timing thing. Councilmember Lee?
Yes, so in the public-private partnership, can you explain how that works to me just a little bit? Who would own the hotel? Would the city own the hotel or the brand?
So that is part of the formal negotiations that take place after we sign a letter of intent to negotiate. And those formal negotiations include both our city attorney, who we've spoken to and does have resources within their office who specialize in this type of negotiation, as well as the city's financial advisor. So those are things that can be discussed and negotiated. So we would come back after that negotiation with all of those answers.
And without going into too much detail on those negotiating points, especially in open session, I think we can say that of the two potential partners we're talking to, they would each take a slightly different approach to that question. It is, and it's complicated a little further by when that ownership transfer might happen. So those are options. There's pros and cons associated with both, and as you might expect, that's all tied to money and the city's financial participation. As Rebecca mentioned, we are paying a whole lot of attention to that first focus area about minimizing the amount of the city's financial participation. You can also describe that as minimizing the city's risk, right? And so with ownership comes risk. So we're, I think, carefully considering all those things. But our major message tonight is that there's a lot of details here that still need to follow. And if I might real quickly on the quiet zone thing, yes, that's an important subject. I think we do know from the experience of other cities who have gone into the quiet zone realm with Union Pacific. There won't be any sudden and quick answers or solutions. And so, yeah, what I'm thinking is going to happen is when we come back to council, we'll be asking council to approve a letter of intent, correct? That letter of intent will lay out some basic parameters on those major points that we'll be negotiating, and we'll be asking council at that time to authorize the city staff team with the city attorney and the city's financial advisors to continue those negotiations. If what we're looking for is a quiet zone fully developed and in place before there's a hotel, then that would be a deal killer. That's not what I think we're looking for here. I think we're looking for the city council's interest in pursuing that intention.
Yeah, I'm not interested in, and I wasn't trying to imply killing the deal at all. I'm saying that we need to be real clear about what those expectations are that they would be wanting the council to commit to. That was my only point. Because this is the first time. Before it was, they knew it was there. Yeah, it would be great if it was there, but it didn't really come up. But now if it's being noted as part of the deal, we just need to be clear about what expectations are.
And that's why we're here. That's
Excellent.
A fairly recent part of the discussion.
Yeah. Okay, so Councilmember Lee, to specifically answer your question, as you can imagine, there are some of this discussion that'll be confidential because of the economic development impact, but then there will be a point our city attorney will certainly make sure that we stay on the straight and narrow and we're transparent when we can share that information. But we're not being asked to vote on anything tonight, but in general, the request is, hey, here's the status. Do you want staff to continue to put time and effort into moving forward with the hotel? Councilmember Kirkland?
Yes, please move forward.
Everybody cool with moving forward? Okay, is there anything else we need to visit about tonight?
No, ma'am.
Excellent. So for both council and the public, it's possible that this is the kind of thing that when it does come back, you might see it as an executive session, and it may also be an item for consideration because there may be a couple things going on at the same time. Excellent. That brings us to item 8C, receive presentation on the possible community support city council subcommittee formation. Lots of words. This was my idea with some help from the city manager, and here's how this deal goes. One of the things that the city council does when they approve their budget is they approve tax dollars that go to some community nonprofits. And that gets real political, shockingly. And there was a time that it was done by council, and council voted, and people got points, and that turned into a little bit of a mess. And then council did what a lot of councils do, and we said, we want staff to do that. And so we've had staff doing that for a while, and then believe it or not, no matter what staff came back with, council had something to say about what staff had prepared. And so we thought with a new council, we might take a slightly different approach. We generally are spending between $120,000 and $130,000. There is a community support fund that the city manager has in the budget, so we are not giving this subcommittee a blank check. There will be some, sorry about that, there'll be some borders of, we expect you to stay between 120 and 130. That being said, ultimately, council is the one who votes on that. The community support folks are planning on coming and presenting on July 12th. We talked about possibly having them present to the subcommittee, but quite frankly, with Councilmember Plunkett joining us in January and Councilmember Kirkland, Councilmember Lee joining us in May, it's a fairly new council, and we thought it would be good for everybody to hear the presentations at the same point. In the past, council has told the organizations that they are not required to make the presentation. It's not like, well, if you don't present, you can't get any money, but it's certainly encouraged, particularly if they're asking for additional funds. But there are some hurdles that they go through before they make it to the list, and that is things like they have to be in good standing with their nonprofit status. They can't be getting sued because they're not paying taxes or whatever the deal is. They got to be in good standing. There's some financial things that they turn in. In the packet, you will see the application that they are already working on. Their applications are due on June 23rd. Councilmember Crouch and Mayor Pro Tem Rogers are aware that all of those applications, once they're reviewed by the Finance Department, they will be put in our OneDrive, and you'll have access to all of those applications. And my suggestion for this year, and I kind of twisted her arm and she agreed, is to have, after the community organizations present on July 12th, that we have a subcommittee, and that would be Mayor Pro Tem Rogers, and she and I visited about it, and we talked about having Councilmember Kirkland serve with Mayor Pro Tem Rogers. And the two of them would take the applications, the presentation, and work out, gee, this is what we think should happen. They would then bring that back to council, and ultimately council approves it, but that would keep us from wordsmithing and having a really long discussion about what ultimately might be fairly easy to do. So that's a slightly different way. Next year, there'll be a new mayor, and they can do it however they wish. In my mind, next year, you might possibly have the organizations present to the subcommittee. It's kind of a long night for them. It makes it a long night for council, but y'all can work that out next year. Not my problem. So what I am wanting to do is officially say, thank you so much, Mayor Pro Tem Rogers and Councilmember Kirkland, for agreeing to serve on this subcommittee, and you will be given a deadline. We don't vote on the final budget till September 20th, but you'll bring it back to council, and it can be brought back to council as a part of the budget, Mr. City Manager said, or you can bring it back and we can talk about it as an agenda item, and actually y'all can decide between yourselves how you would prefer to do that.
Perhaps that would be a subject discussed
In a
at one of the
workshop.
two budget workshops.
Yeah, a budget workshop would be a great place for that. So other council members, are you wanting to arm wrestle Councilmember Kirkland to serve with Mayor Pro Tem Rogers? Are you happy to let Councilmember Kirkland do that? Any comments? Councilmember Lee?
Just for clarity, so their goal or their purpose or charge would be to review the applications to determine how much funding, or make a recommendation on how much funding would be?
They give us square one to start for council to review. Yes, ma'am, that's exactly what, as opposed to asking staff to do it. Councilmember Kirkland?
Yes, the budget for this, does it come from a special bucket like hot funds or?
No, sir.
Is general funds?
What, in the past, what it has been was a Bastrop Power and Light. They don't pay taxes. There's a services in lieu, and that's kind of where the funding came from. It cleans things up that Bastrop Power and Light makes that transfer to the general fund. So this is coming out of, the community support is funded out of general funds. So it has absolutely nothing to do with hot funds whatsoever.
So then the final dollar amount could change?
With council's blessing, that is exactly right.
I mean, could go down.
That is exactly right. It can go up or down.
Right,
That's
okay.
the beauty of 3 people voting.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Understood, thank you.
Thank you so much, Mayor Pro Tem Rogers and Councilmember Kirkland. Any other discussion? We are done with that, and moving on to staff and board reports, which we have none of, so we're done with that. On to citizen comments for just citizen comments, not a specific line item. Madam Secretary, do we have anyone signed up for citizen comments?
No, Mayor.
And we are done with that. That brings us to approval of the meeting minutes for May 24th. Council, I'm happy to take a motion, or if anybody has any edits.
Make a motion to approve.
I have a motion to approve from Councilmember Crouch.
Second.
And a second from Councilmember Plunkett. Is there any further discussion? Madam Secretary, if you'll call the roll.
Councilmember Crouch,
Yes.
Councilmember Plunkett,
Yes.
Councilmember Lee,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Rogers,
Yes.
Councilmember Kirkland.
Yes.
Thank you, council. The motion passes unanimously. The meeting minutes are approved. That brings us to the bottom of page 3, items for individual consideration. We are on item 12A, consider action to approve the second reading of ordinance 2022-14 of the City Council of the City of Bastrop, Texas, annexing Burleson Crossing East for 12.95 acres of land out of the Nancy Blakey Survey, abstract number 98, located east of Edward Burleson Lane and north of State Highway 71, as shown in Exhibit A, providing for findings of fact, adoption, establishing zoning and character district, repealer, severability, filing and enforcement, establishing an effective date, and proper notice and meeting. Ms. Bills.
Good evening. So this first request before you tonight is to annex the remainder of this property that we're calling Burleson Crossing East currently. It's a little over 12 acres, and this area was put under, it's what we call a Chapter 43 annexation agreement development in 2011 during the involuntary annexation process that the city went through at that time. That set up some criteria that this property could remain for a certain length of time outside the city limits with this agreement as long as it maintained its ag exemption and didn't have any development. So now that they're looking to develop it, they've requested voluntary annexation, and this is the second reading for the annexation.
And we did the public hearing before, and that's
Yep.
why we're not doing it tonight.
Yes. And this won't affect the ETJ boundary because with the, by putting it in that Chapter 43 agreement, the ETJ expanded back in 2011, so.
Councilmember Plunkett?
Move to approve ordinance 2022-14.
Second.
I have a motion to approve from Councilmember Plunkett and a second from Councilmember Lee. Council, you would be voting on approving ordinance 2022-14. Is there any further discussion? Madam Secretary, if you'll call the roll.
Councilmember Plunkett,
Yes.
Councilmember Lee,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Rogers,
Yes.
Councilmember Crouch,
Yes.
Councilmember Kirkland.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously. Council, we're on the top of page 4, or as I like to think of it, the last page, and we are on item 12B. I will let council know that we have 2 citizens signed up to speak, and so I'll read the item. We'll have staff, we'll hear from the applicant, and then we'll, either you guys can, normally what we do is let you ask any questions of the applicant, and then we'll have the citizens' comments. We're on item 12B, consider action on the second reading of ordinance 2022-15 of the City Council of the City of Bastrop, Texas, approving the Burleson Crossing East zoning concept scheme, changing the zoning for 12.95 acres out of the Nancy Blakey Survey Abstract 98 from P2 rural to P5 core, and establishing a plan on 19.81 acres located east of Edward Burleson, I think that means lane, not land, and north of State Highway 71 within the city limits of the City of Bastrop as shown in Exhibit A, consideration of warrants and providing for findings of fact, adoption, repeal, or severability, and enforcement, proper notice and meeting, establishing an effective date. Ms. Bills.
Yes, so at your last meeting, you heard from Mr. Job about this project, and you held the first reading and the public hearing on the May 24th. So the area in question is a little under 20 acres. It's a tract that's between the existing Burleson Crossing and the settlement development north of 71. The 12.95 acres that we just did the zone, can't talk tonight, the annexation on, doesn't have any zoning while it's outside the city limits. Everything we annex in comes in default P2 rural. That's how our code, everything annexes is in, and then it's to the landowner or the city to actually take a separate action to rezone it to something else if there's a different zoning district requested. So we're looking at that 12.95 acres of, the applicant has requested to rezone that to P5 core, which is our highest category of commercial zoning district. The remainder of the acreages of the 19.8 acre tract was already in the city limits and already zoned P5 core. The future land use plan for this area does show as general commercial. The proposed zoning concept scheme that they've provided the different exhibits for show that they're planning to do a one large pad site or anchor building with several pad sites along 71 is what their conceptual site plan shows. That's what was in your packet at the last meeting, is the large store is along what would be the extension of Blakey Lane, and then you'd have wagon wheel that would extend through the site, and then additional junior anchors or restaurant or strip center pad sites. Along with the base zoning district request, the applicant also was requesting 28 warrants that requested specific sections of the code and proposed alternative language for each of those 28 sections of the code, which was in your packet, and I have here if you want to go over any of those in particular. The P&Z recommendation, when they heard this, they voted 5-0 to recommend denial of the zoning. They thought with all of the warrant requests, it was premature, and they wanted more clarity on what those warrants would
Ms. Bills, you said
entail.
5-0, but I believe
Sorry,
you're
5-2.
it's
I
5-2,
can't
correct?
read tonight. Sorry, 5-2 to recommend denial. With the way our code and the Texas Local Government Code is written, it'll take a vote of 4 out of 5 of the City Council members to overturn the recommendation from Planning and Zoning Commission. Staff's recommendation to both P&Z and City Council was to consider approval of the request to rezone with some conditions, and that those warrants be based, that we weren't saying no, but we were saying that they needed to be pushed to a later stage when we had better clarity of what was actually going to go there and how changing the language in the code would affect the end product. So either at the public improvement plan stage or the site development plan stage, when you're actually now planning where the road is going to go and planning where the buildings and parking are going to go, to entertain them at those stages. On the first reading, City Council's action was approved by a vote of 5-0 to approve the zoning concept scheme, changing the base zoning from P2 rural to P5 core, with the warrants approved as submitted by the applicant. And then it's a conceptual site plan again, and then I have the list of the warrants as they were submitted if you have any questions on those 28 warrants. Any questions of me?
Good job, Ms. Bills. Mayor Pro Tem Rogers?
Yes, Ms. Bills, I was hoping you might be able to tell us that we have this in first reading. Can you tell me what the consequences of approving this are? Things that I might not think about, that you know more about planning and zoning than I do. And I just want to make sure that I'm going down the right road. You tell me any little hiccups that I might not know about.
So the primary difference between our old code and our new code is when we've kind of say this a lot, it's a form-based code, it's not a use-based code. And by following the way all of the different sections of the code are set up, you have certain requirements that how the streets are supposed to look, where the buildings are supposed to be located, where the parking is located. And by having form requirements, it provides some predictability on kind of what uses will be there. So if you have, not reductions, but requirements of where the parking has to be, you greatly reduce the likelihood that this is going to be a wrecking yard, because that's a commercial use. So if you don't have any requirements to have a building, or have a building with windows, or have a building of a certain size, this entire site could be, because we don't control use, you can do any use that's a commercial use. It could be an auto car lot, it could be some kind of industrial use, anything that falls under the commercial codes.
And why do you suggest some of these warrants to come up later in the plan? I've never built anything, so I don't understand. So tell me, what's the difference of us approving some of these warrants now and then the staff want to do it later? What difference does that make?
Because, again, P5 zoning allows anything commercial, and if you remove one of the requirements that you don't have to have a building of a particular size, you could have a building that's 20 square feet by 10 square feet with 20 acres of storage, open storage, or and we don't have landscaping requirements that require screening, because usually the building is what provides the screening, because the building's up against the road. So that's why we would know better at the later stage, when we actually knew what the size of the building was, where the building was going to be located, and then any restrictions on the streets on how those needed to be constructed. At those stages, we would be able to determine how waiving or changing that rule would actually affect the end product.
So the warrants that this applicant's asking for, and this is his site plan, right? So if we approve the warrants, it goes with that site plan, just that site plan?
The site plan is not attached to the ordinance currently. It's the way the motion was by council was to approve the base zoning with the 28 warrants, not to attach the concept plan. So it's...
Say that in English, so what does that mean? So what if
So this
he
isn't
decides not
attached to the ordinance, so it's the blank slate. The current applicant or someone additional, a future buyer could come in with something that doesn't look at all like that, as long as it meets the sections of the code that aren't warranted, and then those 28 sections that are.
So if we grant these warrants, not only are they allow him to do it, but if he doesn't do it, somebody else can do it with whatever?
Yes, the zoning goes with the land. So this is a entitlement that goes on this property. It goes in our record, so every time someone asks us, what's the zoning on the property, we pull it out, it's P5, and you have this list of 28 things that you can take, that these particular rules that you either don't have to follow or you have to follow in this specific way.
I'm sorry for interrupting. Is it possible to add the map to the exhibit
Yes.
and make the warrants go with that layout?
Yes.
Okay, you're just saying that exactly what council approved didn't include that, so you didn't include that.
Yes.
Am I understanding that correctly? Okay. I'm sorry, Mayor Pro Tem. What she's saying is the motion, I believe that you made, Councilmember Crouch, was to approve the zoning to go to the P5 core and the 28 warrants as written, but that didn't tie this, and do we call it a site plan or a concept scheme?
I call it a conceptual site.
The map, I'm calling it the map. So right now, the map's not a part of that zoning that we would be voting on, and I was asking, could it be a part of that zoning? So it would be tied to the map. And if council chose to, they could include the map.
So if we don't include the map, anybody can use the warrants that we're approving?
Yes.
And does the applicant own the land now?
My understanding, it's under contract to be purchased once this is approved.
So we're actually approving land that's not owned, so the other owner could still do whatever he wanted to, if for some reason it fell through or something.
Yes, the person who's signed off on the annexation and signed the application was not the applicant. There's, in the staff report, we clarify who's the owner and then who's the actual applicant that's applying for this.
But we can't restrict zoning to who owns the property.
No.
Right.
I mean,
But-
you're restricting the land, in that spot. So we have different zonings, in town that over the years, at the time it was appropriate to zone something to commercial. And as times changed, if that wasn't appropriate in the future, it's still zoned commercial until council takes an action. So, or you have areas that are residential that looking at them now, people on the map have no idea why they're residential. They don't make sense because the way a highway all of a sudden got built next to it. And that times change, that's why council has the ability to change the zoning. So.
Councilmember, or Mayor Pro Tem Rogers, Councilmember Lee?
Thank you, Mayor. So I guess then I kind of misunderstood because I thought initially the first reading was approval of just that development, but which they haven't even purchased the land for, and should basically what you're saying, that sale not go through, then we've now forever changed the zoning or the for that piece of property for anyone to be able. And if I'm hearing you correctly, because it's just a concept, we approve these warrants, we don't know if this is actually the build-out of the property. And it doesn't have to be, they can change it as much as they like because we're approving all of these warrants.
Yeah,
Am I understanding you correctly in
they
saying
can
that?
change it. They don't have to follow this. They have to make sure that it follows the parameters of the B3 code and then the 28 warrants as adopted.
And they don't even have to build a retail. It doesn't even have to be retail.
It wouldn't necessarily have to be, no.
But we could attach the map.
Yes, you could attach the conceptual.
Councilmember Crouch?
Well, I know that we sat a long time in here in May and listened to all the warrants and the very descriptive, detailed format that they put them in, and listened to staff's recommendation and listened to the developer's recommendation, and then we all voted 5-0 to grant that. So I'm not, if this is just a second reading, and it's just to approve that, including the map, correct? And I don't think what difference does it make who owns the property? You can't, like you said, Mayor, you can't restrict it based on who owns the property.
Absolutely.
And these people have had a development agreement since 2008? 11? So obviously they have some intent to develop the property, and then they've gone to a lot of
Expense.
time, money, and frustration to put all this stuff together for us to come close to meeting the current code that we have. I think they've already developed the plan probably once since 2011 that met our code at the time, and now they've adjusted to our code with the exception of 28 warrants, which we sat through here and listened to them, and then we were all okay with the warrants at that time. So I'm not sure why we wouldn't approve it with just adding the map to it.
So it'll depend on how the way to add the map will depend on how the motion is read. One of the questions that I had to your point of the way it currently, as I'm understanding it, is the warrants reference the map, like they say lot 6. So if they change their mind, or if there's another owner, I don't know how we do a warrant to a lot 6 if we don't know what a lot 6 is. So and that's what council approves. So it seems like there's a little bit of cleanup, and in my simple mind, if there's and I might be looking to the city attorney, seems like a real easy solution is add the map, because that's what we were all looking at, but I'm not looking over there because I'm knowing it's not, they're not saying this is our absolutely final site plan. So I would think maybe with a recommendation from the city attorney, might want to give them a little bit of leeway or something that they have to bring back to council, but that this really is like, this is the engagement. You can't now decide that you're doing a destination wedding and it's a wrecking yard. Like, there's a commitment of the developer that they intend to follow the map-ish is kind of what I'm thinking. Mayor Pro Tem Rogers?
I think that was my, the last time we read this, I thought all these warrants were attaching to his plan. And I didn't realize that they were attaching just to the land, didn't matter whose plan. So I just want to make sure that his plan gets attached, so those warrants follow this. I mean, he's going to move some buildings here or there, move it around some, I understand that. I just want to make sure that by issuing these warrants that he's asking for, that he's going to give us what he's showing us, pretty much, is that was where my concern was. Because without attaching the map, it was just giving it to the land, not particularly this designer.
So council, not that I don't enjoy spending time with you, but I feel like we are repeating ourselves. Would we like to maybe hear from the applicant? Because I know there's not a motion on the floor, but it seems like council's interested in, could there be a commitment to the map? And I know that's probably not the legal exact terms, but would you like to hear from the applicant, or would you like to hear, we have 2 citizens signed up to speak. Do you have a preference? Who goes first? Councilmember Kirkland?
I would like to hear from the applicant, but also the city attorney raised his hand and
Yes,
was going to say something.
thank you.
Yes, I was just going to bring up the option. You can.
I'm not sure if your mic's on.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. There we go. Just the option that you can approve this second reading with the condition that the 28 warrants apply to the conceptual site plan as presented from the developer.
Excellent. Thank you for clarifying that, and thank you for helping me know that he was trying to get my attention, Councilmember Kirkland. All right, Mr. Applicant. And then after he presents and council asks questions, we will have our citizen comments. Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Steve Derman. I'm the applicant. Actually, Mr. Duff is the applicant, and I want to get that clear right now. I've been under contract on this for quite a while, over a year.
Got to get closer to the mic.
I try to stay away from.
I know.
The reason why I have not closed on the land yet, and as you know, I own the land next door, and I bought the land from Mr. Duff, that back in 2007. We've had a development agreement in place since 2000. September of 2007. It was modified in 2011 with signage, that's all. There wasn't very much in the code, and we had to deal with that. The reason I haven't closed on this land now, and haven't done it already, my plan was to do it last fall, is because of this code. This code, you cannot build a shopping center, and I think we spent a long time rehashing that. Mr. Duff and Mr. Duff, there's 2 Mr. Duffs, were gracious enough to extend till we got through zoning and annexation. The reason why I didn't want to wait to site plan and plating was, one, I would be closing on the land with not really anything. I've spent the last 6-8 months with the city trying to come up with stuff with the staff, and they've denied it in every case. Now, based on their code, they have to, and that's why we're here in front of council. The P&Z did. They didn't, we barely had any discussion. So,
Are you opposed to adding the map?
yes and no, depending on the language.
Why can't you make this easy, Mr. Nerman?
Well, here's the problem, and I tried to state it. It is a concept plan, and it is not just a concept plan. The way your zoning and your code is, there's a utility plan to all those buildings. Those buildings are all users that I'm working with, but it may not be the final users, because there's more. After I went out to ICSC, we added 3 more junior anchors that want to try to come in. So the bottom line is it could move around. So your idea, Connie, is Mayor, I'm sorry, is great. But I don't know how you write it, and maybe it can be written. Secondly, if we don't, then I got to come back every time. I got to come back to the council. If we move, the way your code's written, basically, if we approve this with the concept plan, which again is not just a concept plan, it's grading, it's utilities, it's landscaping, it's elevations, everything. And we are trying to build a shopping center where we're extending Burleson Crossing east. There's never been any discussion for a rendering plan or a wrecking plan. I don't know what that is. So with that said, if we put it and attach it, and I move things, then I probably have to come back and have your approval, unless we can
Hold
get the
that
language.
thought. How much can he move that he doesn't have to come back to planning and zoning and council? Do you need to think about that, or do you know that?
Point, but can you rephrase that question, or can you
What he's
restate it?
saying is if it's a concept plan, but maybe he's showing one big building and he really wants to change it into two smaller buildings, but they would be in the same general area. Will staff say, sorry, this is the concept plan, it showed one big building, you now are bringing me a site plan with two smaller buildings, so you have to go back to planning and zoning and council. I think what I hear you saying is that means I still don't have anything. So, but I do think you're understanding why we're saying we're not giving you a blank check of 28, or potentially the intent was to not give a blank check of 28 warrants and have no idea what was going to be built there.
Connie, I've tried to be very open on all this. I mean, I've met, and you guys have all, Tim Nagia, am I right, explaining things and why we did things. This is my attorney, Steve Metcalf. He might have some language that could work.
Yeah.
All right, attorneys to attorneys, let's see.
Yeah, I just sat here and sketched it out, listening to y'all talking. So, I mean, it's not perfect, but I think it would work. And so the idea of it is a concept plan, and it gives you a concept for what this shopping center is going to look and feel like. But we may need to move some buildings around, or some drive aisles, or some parking, as long as we keep with the general concept of what this shopping center is supposed to do and comply with the alternative compliance part of the 28 warrants. And so here's language I just sketched out really quickly. We can tweak it or whatever, but here was the idea. The conceptual site plan is meant to provide a conceptual layout for the shopping center. It is acknowledged that buildings, parking, drives, et cetera, may be relocated as long as the concept of the shopping center as depicted on the plan is maintained.
I am far more interested in the warrants go away if it is not a retail shopping center. I think that's part, because we're doing these warrants for this kind of thing. So if he's okay with the conceptual, I'm okay with that. I think what I'm more interested in is if it is that these warrants, and I don't know if there's a way to do it, but I don't think we're giving these 28 warrants to absolutely anything, which shouldn't be a problem for you guys, but we have to plan for a worst-case scenario because you never know what's going to happen.
Mayor, I'm not afraid of language that would be a precursor to the lead-in to the warrants that say these warrants apply to a retail shopping center as generally depicted on the concept plan.
Does that sound good to you,
Yes,
Mr.
that'd be
Attorney?
acceptable.
Okay. Counsel? All right. With that now, I do have, like I said, I think so the lot 6, that makes sense to me. You can't reference a plan if there's no plan. There was some small and large. I don't know who defines small and large. There's competent nursery. I don't know who defines competent.
So what we did, after the hearing on May 24th, we were waiting for staff to draft an ordinance, and we were just running out of time. So we went ahead and drafted an ordinance and a warrants chart that took the ambiguity out of it, because the way that chart was originally done, and the reason it was done, is for presentation and explanation purposes, and some of that vague language just doesn't belong in an ordinance. So we took that chart and created one that made it more like ordinance language that you can follow in the future. One prime example was there was some language in there that talked about the original requirement of the code was you had to have trees spaced on 30-foot centers. And so then in the chart, what it said is, okay, well, you don't have to do that.
Per the landscape plan, is what it
Yeah,
says.
from a landscape plan to be approved in the future, which is a future kind of thing. And you could group trees. What we instead said is that you have to have 30 trees for every 100 feet.
How does that compare to what the code was going to require? Because that was actually
It
going to be
said
one
on
of my
30-foot
questions.
centers, and if you have to have 3 trees for every 100 feet, then you can group the trees, as long as every 100 feet you equal 3 trees.
I got you.
I want to put them in the corners, not spacing.
Yeah, and you had said before, I'll do the same number of trees, but I want to clump them, but that's not what the warrant said.
Yeah, that's one example. So what we did is a cleaned-up version that we sent to staff, and
On Friday, correct?
Yeah, I sent it to all
Thursday.
the council members.
Thursday.
I think it was after the packet was posted.
They might have crossed each other. They were right about the same time.
Okay.
But we cleaned up the language such that it would be things that you can actually enforce and read in the future and say, oh, I know what this means, instead of an ambiguous phrase like, oh, you can just group the trees according to what a landscape architect says.
Okay. So I've heard from you guys. Well, let's hear from the citizen comments, and then we'll regroup with the attorney, and we may have you guys come back up. But let's make sure we kind of have all the information before we move on. Our first person who has signed up to speak is Carrie Kaler. If you would please come forward and say your name and address, and you will have 3 minutes.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Carrie Kaler. I live at 1408 Wilson Street in Bastrop. And first, I want to thank you, Council and Mayor Schroeder, for your service to our community, and that service has, and the service of your predecessors, has laid the foundation for where Bastrop is and where Bastrop is going. And to that point, I would like to speak this evening in opposition to this item. As a lot of you know, and some of you may not know, there's a lot of land getting exchanged in this area right now. And that's great. This is a great place to be. We want development. I want development. I want us to have a strong economy and a really good EDC. That said, there's going to be a lot of opportunities for development that come before you, and I hope that you will consider this proposal and all others, not only with that resilience, but also with being conscious of Bastrop's identity, and not to allow this town to become kind of a highway suburban sprawl town like we see in some of our neighboring communities. And I think it's really, it's understandable that a developer wants to save money, but it's just patently false that they can't build to our code. And to have them dictate to city staff and to the council what those codes should be when we have regulations in place is akin to letting the inmates run the asylum. That is not in the best service to the community, and for us keeping that Bastrop feel. What they can't do with this, with the type of code that we have, is come in and take a plan that they've used in Kyle or Buda or Hutto or Round Rock or Georgetown and drop it in, something that they've already designed. It requires a little more thought, but that's good because this is a really thoughtful community and we require a little more thought and planning. And I appreciate your consideration. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Kaler. The next person we have signed up to speak is Deborah Moore. Ms. Moore, if you will state your name and address, you will have 3 minutes.
The only time I was called Deborah was when I was in trouble with my mother. My name is Debbie Moore. I live at 1306 Church Street here in Bastrop. And you may know that I chair P&Z, but I'm not here speaking to you as the chair of P&Z or even a member of P&Z. I come to here to talk to you as a citizen of Bastrop. I've been involved with Bastrop since I moved here in 2004, member of the original Main Street Board. I've been a member of lots of other boards and commissions, and I was involved with the concept plan and the development of the B3 codes. B3 codes have gotten a bad rap, in my opinion. They ain't perfect, that's for sure. But B3 codes can be worked. You have an eminently qualified planning department that is willing to work with any developer that wants to come through. And of the 28 warrants, the ones in yellow have already been approved. Not one of the warrants has been denied out of hand. The applicant's been told that they were willing to work with them when it was appropriate. A concept plan is not, a concept scheme is not an appropriate time to grant all of these warrants, because whatever you approve stays with that land in perpetuity. until our bones are white for a million years, if God don't come before then, that zoning stays with that land. If you want to take another look at it, they may have come back with some things that would make it more appealing. But to vote on this at this time when they are changing what they want, I think is premature. We all have a job here. The planner, the developers want to develop as economically and profitably as possible, as they should. And then they go on to the next project. Your boards and commissions are volunteers who take what we hear and try to do our best job to make a recommendation to you all as to what is best for this community. And then your job is to take what you have been given by both the developers and your boards and commissions and make decisions that are best for this community, both now and in the future, and for the taxpayers and the people that voted you into office. This is a big project, and he has been working on it for a while, but because of the immensity of the project, because of the importance of it, to vote on it and approve it tonight without taking time to look at what they are proposing, I think is a mistake. I am not opposed to this project. I'm opposed to rushing to judgment and voting on it too quickly. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Moore. I have a question for the applicant. Mr. German, Steve, I don't know what else the right way to refer to you. There are many people in this community, and they claim that they have spoken to you or they've spoken to someone that you promised. And the last time, and I'm out there because you guys know how shy I am, I actually took a couple hours off to get a pedicure, and the girl doing my toes said, I heard council approve the project because Target's coming. When does the Target open? And my response was that I knew a lot of things had been discussed, but what had been presented to the city was still A through F. So I am asking you if you are prepared to publicly commit to any anchors, because I have folks in the community saying council approved it because they want to shop at Target.
Okay. I will tell it this way, because I got to be very careful about that.
And I'm
Yeah,
not wanting you to
yeah.
do, but I'm just wanting I know it's discussed in the public, and I want everybody to be on the same page.
I'll tell you who I have letter of intents from, is I have not moved forward because I cannot with this B3 code. We started last March. That's the first time I met with y'all. So it's been a year and 3 or 4 months. And basically, just to answer Debbie's stuff, I don't do this because I woke up and said I want to do it this way. This is kind of comes from the customers of the retailers, and then the retailers demand it, and that's what we do. And they won't come to the city with that B3 code. I'm going to be very clear about that, and I have been. And secondly, I can't go forward with LOIs. I've had LOIs, some of them since last summer, and that's with Burlington, Cavender's, Kohl's. I have not even entertained to take one from Target yet. They are looking. I'm going to go and be up there in a couple weeks. Shoe Carnival, PetSmart, Aspen Dental, Mod Pizza.
Oh, yeah, the other thing is you absolutely are promising everyone an Olive Garden. That was the other one. It's a Target, a Kohl's, an Olive Garden, and a grocery store, because you promised.
Well,
just so you'll know.
Sprouts is looking, but,
Okay.
but I don't have an LOI.
Okay.
I have both Olive Garden and Longhorn Steakhouse, and they're owned by the same company. They're slightly different in size, and that's on that out parcel pad. And I have not, they will choose. So it won't be me, it will be them, because the deal is almost exactly the same. That's what I need to get in place before I come in with plating, because that's going to dictate a little bit difference on size.
So I think what I hear you saying, just so that we're kind of all on the same page, I keep calling it the map. I'm not trying to be disrespectful to it. The
Site plan. It's
zoning,
site plan.
well, except
Yeah.
it's really a site plan, right? It's a zoning. I mean, are you prepared to commit to it as a site plan?
It's a
Okay.
concept plan.
Your
but-
attorney says it's a concept plan, so we're going to stick with that one. So the concept plan is the intention that it would be retail, and although you have every intention of bringing some great folks, you don't have a final commitment to them, nor are you promising council that any
No.
one of those are absolutely coming.
Yeah, no, I do not.
Because we just got to be fair to everybody.
Yes, I got to be fair to everybody, and I can't finish it with that code. So I needed to know I could do this.
I understand.
And so
we're
that's
back
why
to-
I have not finished.
Okay.
The other thing that is out there.
Do you have a time, when do you think, if this was to be approved, is it 3 months, 6 months? And how would the community, what's a reasonable time to know when a commitment would be made? Is it within a year? Is
Yeah,
it?
it's, this is how it'll work. If we get this approved tonight, I will immediately have my engineers start the plating process. That's probably going to require there's some stuff in that we still are probably going to have to match up with the zoning stuff. So I don't know how long that'll take, but let's say it takes 2 or 3 months. During that same time, I will be taking the concept plan and changing it to a site plan, site development plan. And I will be going back to make deals with the folks and get it to the point where we can go to leases. Then I'm kind of at their mercy because we also got to run numbers. The numbers have jumped. The inflation is real. Supply chain issues are real. It has been holding me up on going forward, on going vertical on one other project because I can't get roof truss for 10, 12 months. But they all want to go. They all are committed at this point, and I need to get it done before something changes in our economy. And so I'm going to try to have this where we start and get permits by the end of the year and get started next year. And it takes, building-wise, what should take 6 months takes about 9 months. What takes about 9 months takes the building part of it another 9 months. So it'll probably be opening in 2004, sometime in 2004 tenants.
I hope not 2004.
I mean 2024, excuse me.
There we go. Okay. And I wasn't talking about what I was talking about was the commitment from the vendors to come. And I know, the reason I said 3 to 6 months is because I'm trying to set expectations with the public that it's not something that just happens overnight.
It
It's
does
going
not.
to take you some time to get it done.
It does, and you got to, even though I've done deals with every one of these folks before in the past, again, this is all I do. I'm a retail developer. I have been for almost 40 years. I'm the old guy here. And I also been in Bastrop a long time. H-E-B is my client. That's who made it happen for them to go where they did back in 2003. So I guess my point is, it'll be up to them how fast they move once we start establishing. Right now, they want to cut deals, and then you got to go to lease, and you get in the pipeline, their pipeline. They all have to go to their committees. All of them are public companies. If the economy keeps going sour, they could decide we're not doing 100 stores this year, we're only doing 10. But right now, it looks good. If we can make the numbers work and I can get a commitment that I can actually build something very close to that concept plan. The first phase of it, that's the phase to Wagon Wheel, is pretty well set. The second phase, again, can go with one big anchor and maybe a couple pads, or it could end up like a bunch of junior anchors. Just so people understand, when we did Burleson Crossing in 2007, we closed on a loan in December. That's when the world ended, in 2008. We had commitments from both Kohl's and Lowe's. Lowe's built, which smart move. Kohl's did not. We ended up replacing them with Hobby Lobby, Ulta, Five Below, and Academy. At the time, Target was going to go in this spot, what we're talking about in the back right now, and we were trying to figure out a place for Academy. Of course, that didn't happen. They were approved. So we're hoping this will come again. But I don't have final commitments from any one of them because I cannot. The language that I showed staff and I showed you all on how, like parking requirements, things like that, size requirements, how they face, that came out of leases and documents and contracts with these tenants. It wasn't a brainchild.
Making some assumptions of who those tenants
Yes,
might
and
actually be.
I wrote right on there. I put the front cover of who they were.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm just trying to set expectations for the public because
You're right.
there's a perception that if council would just vote, that, you know, they can go shopping for Father's Day.
Yeah,
And
you're
they
right.
can, but it's not, may not be this
no,
Father's
it
Day.
ta-
So I'm just
yes.
trying to be realistic and also be realistic that there's some confidentiality in the vendors and there's some, it's a part of the deal.
Yes, it's a lot of swirling
So
out there.
council could be voting for a concept scheme, but council is not voting on zoning that guarantees who the tenants are going to be
Thank you,
within
Connie.
that center.
Yes,
Is that a
thank-
fair statement
yes, it
to
is.
everyone?
Thank you, Connie.
Okay. All right. Council, do you have any questions for the applicant? And I know there was some conversation. City Attorney, what have you got for us?
Yes, I just wanted to bring up a few points. Reminder first that if we're looking to
Stay close
pass
to the mic.
this, then you would have to have a supermajority approve that. We have a few options, and just remind you of those options. You can obviously approve the ordinance presented by staff with the exhibits. You can deny the ordinance and provide staff with direction, or you can table the ordinance. And I believe we've had a good enough discussion here to understand that there are some gaps that probably need to be filled, and you know, might warrant a little bit more time. But those are the options that you have in front of you, and just being aware of those things that you would be required to have for passing it.
All right, counsel, and the attorney for the applicant, what I hear you saying is that, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but your preference is not the ordinance that reflects the motion of warrants as written. You would like to see some adjustments to the warrants as written. Did I understand you correctly?
That's correct. Now, the motion was to approve the 28 warrants as requested by the applicant. What was requested by the applicant had morphed over time, and some of the stuff in the ordinance drafted by staff this week was not the most up-to-date request by the applicant. The ordinance we drafted and sent to the council and have brought today, and I believe we have copies of it, it did correct and clean up that stuff. And I would disagree with your counsel to one extent in that he gave you options. I think there's a fourth option. And the fourth option is you can approve the ordinance as drafted by the applicant.
With that language.
Well, yeah, and we'll attach the concept plan and have the lead-in language that says the warrants only apply if it's a retail shopping center, and the language about what the concept plan means.
So I didn't get the email. Did you guys get the ordinance?
I sent it to the council members. I'm sorry, can I?
You got to get on the mic or no one can hear you. Council, would you please acknowledge if you received the ordinance written by the applicant?
I sent it to all five. I forgot to send, I didn't send it to you. Well, we sent it to
Why
staff.
am I helping you out?
I know it, but I sent it to staff.
Councilmember Lee, did you get it?
I got an email kind of repeating what we've talked about tonight.
But did it have an
nothing-
ordinance attached?
I don't remember, I have an attachment, but I don't remember, I didn't look at the attachment, and I just assumed it was a repeat of what we've already looked at.
Councilmember
Not-
Plunkett, I'm just trying to see who's seen it. So did you review the ordinance submitted by the applicant? Have you read it and reviewed it?
I saw it, but not to the point, I didn't realize there was as many changes as you're describing, so I thought we were looking at
There's
pretty much.
five.
Mayor Pro Tem Rogers, have you
I
seen it?
received his email, but I didn't open the ordinance. I thought he was just,
Councilmember Crouch, did you review the ordinance? Your mic's not on, but he said yes, he did. Councilmember Kirkland?
I haven't reviewed anything, no.
Okay, so one of the, council,
Yeah, I was just going to add, I believe the ordinance did not make it in time to be included in the council's packet. And with that, I think it would benefit the city to be able to fully consider that ordinance in a council packet in advance of a meeting so that we're fully aware of the things that the applicant is trying to get us to approve, as well as any concessions that we might make between applicant and staff.
so does that, and I'm being so careful to not put words in people's mouths. Does that mean that your firm has not fully reviewed the ordinance that was submitted by the applicant?
That's correct.
Okay. So one possible thing could be to put this off till the next meeting and direct staff that the intent is to put into the packet the ordinance worded the way the applicant wants it, with the concept plan attached as an exhibit, so if they want to make any changes or notes on that concept plan, and then it would be in the packet, council could review it, the public could review it, and council, we could make the second reading at that time, so it would be a final approval at that point.
Yes, that's correct.
Because what I'm hearing from the applicant is that the motion that was made, the ordinance that was created is not really what they're wanting approved. And I know you'd rather us do it tonight. I totally
No,
get that.
I-
But the ordinance that council, that was in the packet that council has reviewed is one that you would really rather not have approved.
I think it's got language in it that just,
That's going to cause
That's
all
gonna-
of us problems.
all of us problems down the road on trying to figure out what it really means.
Okay. Councilmember Crouch.
Well, I think that we all should have the modified ordinance, and that without everyone seeing that, there's no way we can really vote on it.
Is that a motion, Councilmember Crouch?
Well, yeah, so I'll make a motion to wait until we get till everybody on council has seen the packet, the revised packet.
Ordinance is the word
Ordinance.
you're looking for.
Ordinance, and then vote on it after we can review it.
I have a motion from Councilmember Crouch to table ordinance number 2022-15 until the next council meeting, revised to reflect the applicant's request with the concept plan being added as an exhibit, that's the direction to staff. Is that
Can I
correct?
make one quick
Okay,
request?
let us finish. Is that your motion, Councilmember Crouch?
Yes.
Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second from Councilmember Lee. Now you can make a comment.
Yeah, could I ask, and not necessarily part of the motion, but can I ask that you direct staff and legal to work with us so we can get this on the agenda and in front of you in plenty of time next week for you to review it?
Oh,
Like,
absolutely.
We're ready to meet tomorrow and finalize it with them.
Absolutely. And because, so you will know, next Tuesday, we will be reviewing the agenda for the next council meeting, and it's got to be in the packet. So that everybody's got to start working together right now to get it in the packet so everybody can review it for the next council meeting. So I have, Councilmember Crouch?
Well, I'd just like to add, I know that we have reviewed all these warrants that have come up in detail, because we had them for last month's council meeting, and we reviewed it before that council meeting, and then we spent 3 hours in the council meeting going through the warrants too. So there was some comments that we were just passing something to be passing something, and that's not the case. I know myself, I've looked at it in detail for almost 2 months now. So there's no, we're not passing anything just to be passing anything and to get a target here. And I'm really surprised that with a confidentiality agreement or whatever, you must not have one with them, that we even brought up the name of the retailers, unless they're went public themselves. So this plan should be approved without a tenant being known who's in there.
Absolutely, and tenants won't be tied to the zoning at all. I'm just trying to clarify public perception and public discussion.
Because as your chair of the Planning Commission pointed out, zoning lasts forever.
Exactly.
And tenants will change over time.
Well,
Exactly.
and a good example of it is the Burleson Crossing that's there now. There wasn't an academy there when it was first built. It was just a hole. And the same thing with the Ultra. right
And
next to
Staples
it.
became Old Navy. Things happen.
Yeah,
Life happens.
So it's not that shouldn't be taken into consideration. And also, to the other lady's point, they do design these developments just to plug and play and put them in a specific area. And there's a reason they do that. It's because they build them all over the country, and they have to build their buildings so that they're not wasting money, so that they can keep their prices low when they come into town. So the Burleson Crossing, the other one, and Steve's made this point in the last meeting, is that it was modified to fit the elevations of downtown Bastrop. And so they did take into consideration our scheme in Bastrop, our downtown elevations here. And when they did that one, and they're doing the same thing with this next project, even though it's not to the point in the drawings to where it's shown yet. But that'll all come when the drawings get developed.
Thank you, Councilmember Crouch. We have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion?
Mayor, could I, before
Yes,
council
Mr.
votes,
City Manager.
Could the motion be repeated for
I
my
was
benefit?
going to ask that myself.
So I believe that the motion is to table the second reading of the ordinance 2022-15 until the next council meeting, and the direction to staff is to work with the applicant to use the ordinance that was submitted by the applicant last week with and to add a zoning concept map as an exhibit to the ordinance and bring that back to council with council's assumption that it's always been reviewed by our attorney as well.
The last part is, I didn't say, but it needs to be reviewed by the attorney.
And
If you didn't-
that's part of the process to get it into the
Yeah,
packet.
and if you didn't have time to review it for this meeting, then we need to do that for the next meeting so that it's real crystal clear.
Did that help, Mr. City
Yes, sir.
Manager?
Yeah, I do, I appreciate that. I think that direction is clear. I think the council's direction on May 24th was clear. I hope council understands that what was in your packet provided by the staff was in response to and in conformance with the clear direction we got from the council in that motion on May 24th. I'd also like to quickly clarify, for whatever it's worth, we agree that the warrant language could stand some improvement. That's part and parcel of what you were hearing from the city staff team on May 24th. We will obviously work with the applicant and the applicant's attorney and the city attorney to meet this deadline of being back on the city council agenda on June 28th. I will say that, and again, council's direction was clear, and what gets presented back to the city council on June 28th will include what the applicant wants. I'll also say that in the short amount of time we've had with the applicant's revised language to the warrants, that we still think there are some concerns here. We will take the time to articulate those concerns. We've been clear from the very start that, and I do understand what the tension and the conflict here is. We need to know what the standard is. We need to know what the applicant is proposing. That's what these codes are all about, and that is it's a good thing, and it's a beautiful thing when it all comes together. Don't think that what we're asking for at all is anything unreasonable. And council, before you vote, and thank you for your patience here, there is another option. And that option is what the staff recommended on May 24th. And if anything should prove the wisdom behind that recommendation is the discussion we've had on this topic these last two council meetings. As Chair Moore very well put, some of these warrants are just frankly premature at this time. That is what the body of P&Z said. That is what your city staff is saying as well. And if we're looking for an efficient process moving forward that is clear and transparent, that is exactly what we recommended on May 24th. Thank you.
And I also want to add that I know that the city attorney didn't have an opportunity to review the packet because he called me and told me that he didn't have time to review it. And so if you could review that before our next meeting, and we've already all listened to the warrants and have a clear understanding of them, and we made a vote based on that, then I think we just have it for the next meeting.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Is council clear on what we are about to vote on?
Do you mind if I suggest one more thing?
You are really pushing your luck, possibly. Go ahead.
I know. So we may not reach total agreement with the city attorney and staff. We may have 2 or 3 things that we can't
And you
resolve.
bring them back and you say,
Can we
we're saying
just-
this and
we'll
they're
let
saying that.
council decide on those 2 or 3
Yes,
things.
absolutely. That goes without saying. Absolutely. Thank you for the clarity. So they need to work it out as best they can, make sure we have something at council, and the city attorney can say they want A, and I really think you should do C, and council gets to decide whether we want A or C. Absolutely. But let's try to have that Venn diagram overlap as much as possible. All right, we ready to vote? Madam Secretary, if you'll call the roll.
Councilmember Crouch,
Yes.
Councilmember Lee,
Yes.
Councilmember Plunkett,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Rogers,
Yes.
Councilmember Kirkland.
Yes.
Thank you, council. Motion passes unanimously. It is 8:20. Do you guys need a break? Does anybody need a bathroom break or rock and roll? Rock and roll, they say. Thank you, gentlemen. All right, council, we are on item 12C. Consider action to approve resolution number R 2022-54, the City Council of the City of Bastrop, Texas, approving construction contract with SJ, and I think it's Lewis, Construction of Texas Limited of San Antonio, Texas, for West Side Collection System Phase 2 in the amount of $4,485,944.17. I love the 17 cents. Authorizing the city manager to execute all necessary documents, providing for a repealing clause, and establishing an effective date. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Council. In front of you tonight is a construction services contract for the West Side Collection System Phase 2 project. To give you a little bit of background, the City Council approved multiple task orders back in 2018 with KSA engineers for engineering services for the wastewater treatment plant and its ancillary projects. These ancillary projects include the transfer lift station in Forest, Maine, which is currently in design, the decommissioning of the wastewater treatment plant number 1 and 2 existing, and also the West Side Collection System, which at some point, because it was taking too long to get the easements for the whole project, the city took the decision to move forward to split the projects in 2 phases. So the West Side Collection System Phase 1 started construction, and it's in its final stage of completion. We've completed the bid phase for the West Side Collection System Phase 2, and the construction includes these major tasks: site clearing, wastewater installation of the wastewater lines, ranges from 8-inch to 36-inch in diameter, and the demolition of the 2 lift stations, the Seton and the Hunter's Crossing lift stations. So here it's a map showing the limits of work. You have seen this map before. Right here at the bottom is the wastewater treatment plant number 3, currently in construction. What you see in blue is the West Side Collection System Phase 1, that's almost at final completion. The red here is the Forest Main, the transfer lift station in Forest Main, and what you see in green is the West Side Collection System Phase 2 project. So the bids were advertised on April 21st and 29th of this year. We opened bids on May 19th. We received 5 bids. And here you can see the bid summary. The lowest bidder was SJ Lewis Construction of Texas. KSA reviewed the bids for any errors and discrepancies and also checked references. And after their evaluation, they determined SJ Lewis Construction of Texas to be the lowest responsible bidder and provided us with a recommendation to award. The funding is coming from Certificate of Obligation Series 2022 and impact fees. We intend to provide a notice to proceed in July of this year. The contractor will have 270 days to be substantially complete, and we anticipate this project to be complete in May 2023. We don't anticipate any services interruptions in water and wastewater, and we plan to notify the adjacent in the vicinity of this project, either by providing door hangers or one-on-one communication if needed. With that, we ask you to authorize the approval of this project.
Thank you, Ms. De Carvalho. One of the things, just from back in the day, we all know pretty tight bids. That's always a good sign, from 4.4 for the lowest bid to 4.8 for the next bid, and they go all the way up to 6.5. that's really pretty tight for a project that size, so I think that bodes well. Council, any questions regarding the bid? Councilmember Lee?
I just wanted to say, excellent presentation, because I had 3 questions, and you answered all 3 questions in your presentation. Thank you.
You're welcome. Is that a motion, Councilmember Lee?
Make a motion to approve.
I have a motion from Councilmember Lee.
Second.
And a second from Councilmember Plunkett. Turns out when you build the wastewater treatment plant, you got to get the stuff there. The plant doesn't do you any good. So with that, Madam Secretary, if you'll call the roll.
Councilmember Lee,
Yes.
Councilmember Plunkett,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Rogers,
Yes.
Councilmember Crouch,
Yes.
Councilmember Kirkland.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously. Great
Thank
job.
you.
Thank you, Mr. Lang. Appreciate it. All right, council, we are moving on to item 12D. You received a handout from the city secretary with item 12D, which was prepared by Mr. Kirkland, so thank you for that. We have someone signed up to speak, and the agenda item reads as follows: discussion and potential action on mobile food truck vendor permitting fees. Mr. Kirkland, Councilmember Kirkland.
Yes, so I'd like to hear from this gentleman if we could.
Do you happen to be Timothy Schuman by any chance?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. If you would say your name and address, and you'll have 3 minutes, and then if they ask you questions, you'll have more than 3 minutes. But state your name and address.
All right. My name is Timothy David Schuman. I live at 904 Farm Street. I am the owner of the Yoked Food Truck in downtown Bastrop. We are Bastrop's first fully mobile food truck, and we're very proud of that. Our dream with the food truck is to be able to expand and grow our giving back to the community of our proceeds. Right now, we're starting out at 10%, and we are going to be, as we grow and continue to grow, we want to raise that from 10% to 15% to 20%, all that, and keep going up. The issue that we're running into right now is with the permitting fees. The permitting fees right now for being a temporary food vendor like myself with a fully mobile food truck is $1,200 every 3 months. That accumulates to $4,800 a year. Looking at what the surrounding counties and cities offer, the highest I was able to find was a little under $600, and that was Austin. For an entire year. The city has 3 different types of food truck permits, or food vendor permitting. One is for being at a food court, and that sounds very reasonable at $600 per year. However, if I want to get up from that food court and leave and go do an event or doing a festival here or make more sales revenue for the city, that is drastically different from $600 to just $4,800 a year. Just to be able to get up and go be mobile. There is another food truck or food vendor permit that is on an existing site, which is $1,200 or $1,300 every 6 months, which is still outside of what is the highest charge in our surrounding areas in Central Texas. And so with what's being built downtown with the food court, it's allowing more businesses to come forth and bring and create foot traffic for downtown. We see these signs on the bridges that say, visit Bastrop. We want to eat, stroll, sip, and shop. Food trucks fit in nicely with that, and we feel like it would promote a lot of good foot traffic for the city. And right now with the permitting, it's hurting local small businesses trying to get up and going. My revenue for the first 3 months was $5,200. $1,200 of that was taken away. That's almost 25% of what I have made. And we have Kona Ice of Bastrop here with us today in support. I have a couple of support letters from Children's Advocacy Center in support of this. Shiraz Garden, which is a wedding venue who wants to book food trucks for the local area and get business out here to Bastrop with those wedding venues. And we also have a 4th-generation Bastropian, Danielle Palombi, who owns a realtor, also with the support letter that I have for you guys if y'all want to take a look at those. And so I just propose a considerable and reasonable permitting fee to allow a path for these local small businesses that want to get up and started and get back to the community. Thank you.
Would you like to have an option of an annual fee, or do you think there's and I know we want them lower, that's very, very clear.
course.
But do you think it's important to have like a 3-month, 6-month, 1 year, or was it better to just have 1 year?
I think it's better. What I've seen with the research is just a yearly permit fee. And say if we were doing like an event, like a festival or something like that, special event permitting fees could align with that, especially if we're in the right of way of a street or something like that. So I think that would be doable.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm totally off then.
All right, because currently the special event fee for the food truck is $100.
Yes,
So
ma'am.
I just wanted to get your input from that. So Mr. Kirkland, do you have numbers that you would like to recommend?
Well, so yes, if we, Colin, do you have that other slide? So
Mr. Schuman, you can sit down.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you very much. So I did some research on this topic myself, and I picked a variety of cities around Bastrop in Central Texas. I then looked for which cities in Texas have historic main streets, and then I looked for cities that are about the same size as Bastrop, around 10,000 residents.
Which one of your list is about the same size as Bastrop?
Maybe, I don't recall. It was just sort of, I pulled like two of it, like maybe Winsboro, or I don't remember. It was just, it's like I was looked for a
Okay,
couple
I'm
cities
just
that
saying
were
like
about-
San Antonio and San Marcos,
Oh,
they're
clearly.
way, way
Right,
bigger.
They're way bigger,
Yeah,
agreed.
okay.
And then I just sorted them alphabetically with Bastrop on the top.
Okay.
And this involved reading a lot of ordinances, and because it's harder to find the information than you wish that it were when you just Google it and search the city site. So I ended up reading ordinances and so on.
I did enjoy the Smithville, Tennessee link that was sent in the packet,
Yes.
so.
I skipped that one. So anyway, other thing I'll add is that I didn't find any that I didn't put on the list. So meaning to say, I didn't find one that was $10,000 and I purposefully left it off, right?
You
So-
didn't cull the list to stack the deck.
Correct. I sort of stopped looking after I saw, okay, this is a representative sample of cities, and it seems like there's kind of a pattern here. And Austin was the most expensive one below Bastrop that I saw. There was split between a permit fee, an application fee, and a fire inspection. And others had divisions like that as well. Taylor, they only had a $35 fire fee and a $200 permit that they reverted back to the county, not to the city, and so on. And San Antonio had an interesting one where it was $100 a year in certain downtown areas on certain days of the week, and then you could use that one. But $300 a year for areas outside of that. So every city has rules that are appropriate for them. But what you see is that the city of Bastrop's rules are 8x higher than the most expensive and quite expensive. And so I just kind of looked at this and was thinking, well, goodness, we have 3 categories. I don't necessarily think we should change the category names, because then that implies a lot of things in the ordinances. I went back and read those, and there's independent numerical paragraphs for them. So we could just keep those, and we could set the fees differently. Now, in terms of a direction for setting fees, we don't have an ordinance to read today on a first reading. So as I asked you about earlier, our choices are to do nothing, to discuss it, and request that an ordinance be drawn up for a first reading at the next meeting, or to request that we deal with it as part of budgeting. And those are, I think, probably our options.
So is there, if we're just going to change the fee, is there any way to this first reading and you bring an ordinance with those fee amounts back at the next meeting?
No, we would have to have the
We'd have to have an ordinance to it, okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
The other thing, just because, history matters,
Yeah.
I happened to be around in 2020 when we voted on them, and, things are changing really fast, and at the time in 2020, there weren't a whole lot of food trucks, and there was, Councilmember Plunkett was not on the council, but there was a huge concern from the council members that were on council at the time that they didn't want a food truck to get an unfair advantage over a brick and mortar. They didn't want having the fees being too low being a disadvantage to the business. They could be completely wrong, and we could be in a different spot, but I think it's fair that the public know that staff didn't recommend these high numbers. The council at the time said, we want these higher numbers. Councilmember Plunkett, you are always the more choices, the better, bring it on. Since you have some more interest in this, I would be really interested in your perspective and if you have thoughts on those fees. And I'm not saying they were right in 20, I'm just wanting us to know where it came from. Council intentionally set them.
You're right. I've always been the more the merrier. When we bought our business on Main Street, we, pretty much after 8 o'clock, we were the only lights on, and we were very adamant that we were going to be open, and we were going to be open until our, in the hours that we said we were going to be open, and that was going to be every night. And we had some lonely nights, but eventually people caught on that, we were going to be there when we said we were going to be there. And we've got a lot of choices downtown now. I'm heartened to see all the lights that are on and all the businesses that are open on Main Street after 9 o'clock even, 10 o'clock sometimes. So it's great, and I think it has certainly not hurt my business. If anything, it helps. I definitely believe that it does. So, and I think that the food truck industry is a restaurant incubator of sorts. So I think it's beneficial. It's economic development. It's a beautiful thing, and I think the fee should reflect that. And I don't see any reason to have onerously high fees, or to try to get, and understand one of the things that they were trying to do was to offset the savings in property taxes that the food trucks would have, and I'm not concerned about that at all.
All right, it's a beautiful thing. We need to lower the fees. Do you have any beautiful fees that you would like to suggest, Councilmember Kirkland?
So I have a question first, and this is for city staff.
Probably Miss Bills. She's very excited. Yeah, you can ask. She
Okay,
can hear.
great. So my question is, what is the floor on the fees that would cover our expenses?
I would have to do some research with fire, because a lot of it's fire review and building review. And it depends on if they're...
If there's a fryer.
What type they are, because so the ones that are moving around constantly can be in the public right-of-way, so we have to kind of know where they're going to go to know that where they're not blocking streets, versus the ones that are in the food court, they're going to be there, they're going to stay there, we know that they're hooked up to utilities. So we'd have to do some research.
Okay.
Can I make a suggestion?
Please.
I received an email from Mr. Schuman early last week with this concern, and I responded that, and I heard you mention earlier, Mr. Kirkland, this as an option, and it's an option I'm going to recommend. And typically we look at our fee schedule as part of the budget process. It's attached to the budget. We're in the middle of budget right now. We'll be asking council to vote on a new budget in September. That we do understand council's the concern here, and if there's general consensus direction from the city council that our fees are too high and you'd like for us to make a recommendation on how to lower them, and that was a good question, Mr. Kirkland, about what that floor would be. As Ms. Bills said in the cover memo that she wrote that's in the packet, as a general policy intent, we try to cover our direct costs with the fees, and if that's consistent with what council's looking for, let's put that in the budget process. If that puts our food truck vendors in a bind in the meantime, I think we could work with them on that. If we know that council's looking to amend the fee, and that gives us the right process and an appropriate amount of time to think this through a little bit.
Thank you, Mr. City Manager. Councilmember Kirkland, that was one thing I was going to suggest. If we're going to be voting on it by September, what if the motion tonight, if council will let us, is that we extend any existing food truck permits that have been issued by 3 months, so that nobody's paying an additional fee. They get the additional time, and then we review all the fees at budget, and that gives us an opportunity to find out, to your point, maybe we still have the 3 definitions. Should they all be the same?
Yeah.
Should they be different? And it kind of gives all of us some time to come up with a little bit more information. But if we, Mr. City Manager and Council, if we could just extend it, and no one has to put any more money out of pocket, and we cover it for the time, maybe that is agreeable to folks. Is that? So if someone wanted to make a motion, that would, you might just consider that being part of it.
Cheryl has her mic on too.
I'm sorry, Councilmember Lee?
That's okay. I have a question. So in making a recommendation for fees, the council would make those, or are you asking us to recommend to you what those fees should be or what that looks like?
Staff will come back to us.
It is up to, the fees are adopted by city council, and that's typically included in the budget. That's part of the budget ordinance. And what I'm suggesting is that we take the conversation that council had tonight, interest in lowering the fee, interest in covering our costs, our direct costs, and we build that into the budget and have council look at that and vote on it. Look at it, we'll present it in late July. Council will have a couple of budget workshops in August and vote on it in September. And I think we can manage so that we're not asking any food trucks that are looking for a new permit in the meantime. We would need to do the necessary inspections, but we would suspend any invoicing of fees until we get the new fee figured out.
I would like to ask for consideration for a couple of things. So I don't think every vendor will want an annual fee. So I want us to consider 3, 6, and 12 months.
Okay.
Because not one works for everyone, right? So I would like to make sure that continues to be part of the consideration, as well as one of the things in my research, and I can appreciate, or I'd like to thank Councilmember Kirkland for making this an item, because I love to research things. So it gave me an opportunity to research food trucks all across the nation. But one of the main differences that I noticed was we just have a blanket fee that doesn't really detail what the fees are for. So what's the application fee? What's the processing fee? What's the fire inspection fee? I, wanting to run a business, would want to know that. So to just say, oh, it covers some staff time. Okay, well, every application doesn't require the same amount of staff time, so how is that being broken down in terms of a processing fee? So I did some calculating on my own and came up with $800 for an annual fee. And that was just me throwing some numbers on a piece of paper. Application fee, $105, processing fee, $35. So kind of breaking it all down so that they know this is what I'm paying for, and maybe help y'all determine what the bottom line cost would be, because you're itemizing each line item instead of just saying, oh, we're gonna charge $350. Okay, well, what is that for? So I would like consideration for an itemization of what's being charged or included in that fee, and then I would like to see there still be a 3, 6, or 12-month option for the food truck vendors.
May I say one more thing about that? Because with the $1,200,
You can't say it from there. You have to come to the mic.
With the $1,200 fee, what I've been told is it does just a regular inspection. I've asked those questions to planning and development. What does the every 3 months give me? They said just give you another permit. I'm like, am I getting inspected again? They're like, no. The $1,200 every 3 months, I to this day do not know where it's going to, because the fire inspection, the hood inspection inside of the truck, all the fire code, the extinguishers, the propane inspection, those are all things I also had to go do. That's part of the application list that I had to have like already brought to the table as a checklist completed. And those are all separately cost me money to get done, just to get on the application checklist all checked off, and then pay the $1,200 on top of that every 3 months. And then I'm not getting anything done in those 3 months except given a different paper to put on the side of my truck. So yeah.
Okay. And again, let's not beat up staff for numbers that council set.
Yes.
So, you know, like it's.
And I've said that to people as well. I want the city to enforce the rules, and I want the rules to be the right rules. And this is an example of that is.
Right,
Absolutely.
but again, out of respect for the people who made the decision at the
Agreed.
time, they
Agreed.
made the best decision they could with the information they had at the time.
Absolutely agreed.
And their goal was to not put Main Street businesses that were struggling, you know, and I'm not saying that right, but every council, there's a
Every
different
council
set of
gets to make
facts.
that choice.
It's a different
Exactly.
set of facts. That is exactly right. So what I believe you guys are about is don't penalize anybody now, review some things, 3, 6, 12 months may or may not make sense, look at the different categories, and we're also clearly, I don't think we're asking for the taxpayers to subsidize something. So that's why you were asking for a bottom line. There's a
Correct.
point that we need to be covering cost.
Right, you looked at me and asked for a number, and I said, well, I want to make sure we're.
I got, absolutely. I know, and I very, very much appreciate that. So I'm happy for anyone to make a motion.
So I'll make a motion.
Oh, I'm sorry. Councilmember Crouch had his light on
Yes, you
and.
did. Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, as far as Mr. Hoffman's comment, I think that's a great thing that if John can include in his motion that we table the fees until the next budget. And that'd be a great faith effort for all of our vendors, not just one, but that would be a good show of faith for that and to help our vendors out. And then I agree with Cheryl 100% as far as if Jennifer and staff can put together the cost of that permit, then that would serve two things. So if we can do both, and if John's going to make the motion, then I'll wait and second it.
There's a lot of things there.
Yep. Let's see how you do. All right,
I know, right?
Councilmember Kirkland.
So I motion that we take this topic up again with the budget. And in the meantime, we would extend any permits that are out there through the budget. That when we are reading it in the budget, we want to know the bottom line costs, and we'd like options for 3, 6, and 12-month permits, and that.
All righty, I have a motion from Councilmember Kirkland.
Second.
I have a second. You missed your chance, Councilmember Crouch. I have a second from Councilmember Plunkett. Mr. City Manager, are you clear on the motion?
One point of clarification on the part of the motion about extending permits. I think the intent is to ensure we're not continuing to charge the current fee in the interim. The extension of permits would be a function of inspections, right? And so I don't want council's motion to imply that we are just approving permits without any other consideration. I think the intent
You'd rather it waive fee?
Well, and I'm not sure waiving fee. The word I used earlier was we'll suspend the invoicing of fees, these fees, until we know what the new fee is. Is that not clear?
Well, when you say suspend the invoicing of these fees, it makes it sound like there's an invoice coming at these fees.
That's what I intend, and if that's not what council intends.
But at the new rate.
At the new
At the new rate.
Yeah.
At the new rate. Sure.
Suspend
I mean,
invoicing
I'm
until
not-
a new rate
I'm not-
has been
I'm
established?
not presuming what that new rate is, but
Gotcha.
when there is a new rate, that's what we'll be invoicing.
So I have a question.
Mayor Pro Tem Rogers.
So
Didn't mean to complicate it.
by by suspending them, okay, let's say my permit's due July 1st. When the budget's due, he's gonna have to, you're gonna send him an old invoice from July?
July to July at the new rate.
I'm just asking, making sure.
That is what I think is most fair.
Okay, I
yes,
just want to
at
make
the
sure I
new rate.
understood what
Yes.
you're referring to.
This is a staff person that's going to get to process these. This applies to everyone we currently have in the system and any new people who will come in.
Yeah, you got to be fair to everybody.
Okay, so, well, that's what I mean. So
Yes.
everyone that hasn't dealt with us so far will come in and get their permit for what they think
Free.
will be for free
They'll
for
get
now.
inspected, but they won't get an invoice
And they
till
won't get an
October.
invoice for another 4 months.
That's right. Thank you, Jennifer.
So we have a motion that's been seconded,
Yeah, so
and
do
someone
you,
may need to amend that.
Yeah, can you amend the motion?
are you interested in making a friendly amendment?
I'm interested in it.
Why don't you make a friendly amendment and we'll see if you can get a friendly second?
Okay, well, I would like to amend my prior motion to add and somewhat change that we would suspend the invoicing of fees and then invoice them at the new rate after budget.
And Councilmember Plunkett, are you agreeable to that amendment?
I am agreeable.
All right, excellent. We have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Is council clear about what you're voting on? Madam Secretary, if you'll call the roll.
Councilmember Kirkland.
Yes.
Councilmember Plunkett.
Yes.
Councilmember Lee.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Rogers.
Yes.
Councilmember Crouch.
Yes.
Excellent. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you for your note. Thank you for your business. And we are moving on to item 12E, consider action to approve resolution number R 2022-53 of the City Council of the City of Bastrop, Texas, confirming appointment by the mayor of Patrice Parsons to place 6 of the Planning and Zoning Commission as required in section 3.08 of the city's charter and establishing an effective date. Council, you have, we passed out a new resolution. It had the wrong name at the top and the right name in the body of it. What you got handed to you has the right name in both places. The application from Ms. Parsons, who goes by Pete, by the way, Pete Parsons. She is a resident of Pecan Park. Currently on planning and zoning, you have 4 people in the downtown area, 1 in Tahitian Village, 1 in Riverside Grove, 1 in Hunters Crossing, and 1 in Pecan Park. But the person that you have in Pecan Park has excessive absences, and I've been trying to reach out to that person. I believe that they have some personal issues going on and will be coming off. But one of the things that I always try to do, particularly with planning and zoning, is make sure that we have representation across all of the neighborhoods. Ms. Parsons' application and her resume were in the board and commission spot where you always find these applications. She has an extensive background in solar, environmental, and what I liked the most about her was that she's very definitely worked within government entities and kind of understands how the bureaucracy of things work. And she was suggested to me by a representative of one of the developers who said, "Did you know Pete Parsons lives in Bastrop? You ought to get her on a board." So I met with Ms. Parsons, and I respectfully request your confirmation of the appointment.
I move to approve. Oh,
Everybody on 3.
I'm going to give that to Mayor Pro Tem Rogers in a second from Councilmember Plunkett. Is there any further discussion? Madam Secretary, if you'll call the roll.
Mayor Pro Tem Rogers.
Yes.
Councilmember Plunkett.
Yes.
Councilmember Lee.
Yes.
Councilmember Crouch.
Yes.
Councilmember Kirkland.
Yes.
Thank you, Council. The motion passes unanimously. That brings us to item 13. You're sitting in the seat, but I don't know which council member wants to make the motion to adjourn at 8:53.
So I motion that we adjourn at 8:53.
I have a motion from Councilmember Kirkland.
I second.
And a second from Councilmember Crouch. It is 8:53 and we are adjourned. Everyone be safe.